I want to shock you. I want to challenge everything you have ever been taught, everything you believe about your life, your problems, and your search for God. You have been looking for something to be fulfilled in your future, a healing, a demonstration, an answer. But I tell you, that very search is the barrier. You listen to these words, all is fulfilled in me, and you think it was a statement for one man, for one time, long ago. You have placed its reality outside of yourself, in a Bible, in a history book. This is the great illusion. What if I told you that this statement is the present tense truth of your own being? What if the entire spiritual journey is not about attaining, but about recognizing what is already, and always has been, completely fulfilled within your own consciousness? This is not theology. This is a transformative principle that, when understood, dissolves the world of lack, sin, sickness, and death, and reveals the kingdom right where you are. Stay with me, and you will discover why you have never needed to ask for anything from God, and what silently awakens when you stop seeking and begin beholding. Now, let us take this first point and allow it to unfold within our consciousness. For if we miss this, if we hear this, and yet still look to the horizon for our completion, we remain trapped in the very dream we seek to escape. The declaration, all is fulfilled in me, is the most radical statement of present perfection ever uttered. It does not point to a historical figure's accomplishment alone, but to the very nature of spiritual identity itself. Your entire life, you have been educated to live in a state of becoming. From childhood, you are taught to prepare for the next grade, to strive for the next achievement, to save for the future, to seek a better state of health, a higher state of consciousness. Society, religion, even much of so-called spirituality, is built on the premise that you are incomplete now, but with enough effort, time, or grace, you will one day be whole. This is the foundation of the human sense of lack. It is the engine of all anxiety, all striving, all sense of separation from good. Think of the most common prayers, the most frequent petitions of the human heart. Please, God, give me this. Please, God, take this from me. Please, God, show me the way. In every single one, there is an inherent assumption. Fulfillment is not here. It is somewhere else, with someone else, and must be sent, granted, or revealed at some future moment. But I am here to tell you that this very posture of prayer, as it is commonly understood, can be the final fortress of the ego, the last stand of the belief that we live apart from the infinite, complete presence of God. The truth is not that you must bring God into your situation to fix it. The truth is that God is the only substance and reality of your situation right now, and your recognition of this is what appears humanly as harmony. Consider a simple, daily life example. You have a pain in the body. Instantly, thought leaps to the future. It formulates a desire. I want this pain to be gone. It may even plead, God, fulfill this need. Heal me. But in that very moment, you have accepted the pain as a reality to be eradicated by another, future reality called health. You have placed fulfillment in a tomorrow where the pain is absent. But what if you could pause that frantic thought stream? What if, instead of launching a campaign against the pain, you became utterly still? Not to wish it away, but to question the very premise of lack it represents. In that stillness, you might begin to sense something behind the H, beneath the fear, a presence, a peace that has nothing to do with the presence or absence of sensation. That peace is not waiting to be created. It is here. It is the very fabric of your being, undisturbed by the temporary appearance of discord. That peace is the already fulfilled nature of your life. The pain may dissolve in that recognition, or it may not, humanly speaking. But something monumental has shifted. You are no longer a victim seeking salvation from a condition. You are abiding in the consciousness of wholeness, of which the body is a fleeting expression. The condition loses its authority, its identity as a definer of reality, because you have touched the reality that is always fulfilled. Or consider a mental burden, a financial worry, a relationship tension. The mind, like a frantic calculator, runs scenarios, seeks solutions, replays past failures. It lives in the unfulfilled gap between what is and what should be. It begs the universe to fill that gap. But what if the gap itself is the illusion? What if the wholeness of divine life does not know such gaps? To understand all is fulfilled in me is to turn, not to a better calculation, but away from calculation altogether. It is to turn inward to the very center of your awareness and to realize that the I that is aware of the problem is itself untouched by the problem. This I is not the worried, calculating personality. That is a shadow. The true I is the very place where the infinite, unconditioned presence of God is being expressed as individual consciousness. That consciousness is complete. It lacks nothing. It is the fulfillment. When you rest there, even for an instant, a power goes forth from that center. Not your personal power, but the power of the already complete reality, and it reorganizes the shadow pictures of your human experience. Supply does not come from a distant source to a needy you. It appears as the visible form of the invisible, fulfilled substance that you are, right here, right now, once you stop defining yourself as the person who lacks it. The healing, the solution, the harmony you seek is never, ever the arrival of something new. It is always the dissolving of a mental barrier that hid the eternal, fulfilled fact from your view. Your work, then, is not to build fulfillment, but to consent to it. It is not to achieve, but to acknowledge. It is to relentlessly turn from the testimony of the senses, which constantly shout of lack, of unfinished business, of impending danger, and to listen in profound silence for the eternal hum of the fulfilled. That hum is your own being. It says only one thing: it is done. This understanding logically and gloriously dismantles the next great barrier, the search for God as an external being. For if all is fulfilled within this very consciousness, then what are you seeking? And who or what is it you believe you are seeking? We must be mercilessly honest here. The entire structure of human religion and much of human spirituality is built upon a relationship, a seeker and a sought after, a sinner and a savior, a petitioner and a potentate in the sky. We have been handed a God of transaction, a God who listens, judges, decides, grants, or withholds. A God who can be pleased or displeased, who rewards the good and punishes the wicked. But I ask you, in the light of fulfillment, what need is there for such a transaction? If completion is the present tense reality of your being, then the God you have been praying to is a phantom, a projection of the unfulfilled mind itself, created to explain the very sense of lack that the realization of fulfillment dissolves. This is not atheism. This is the end of idolatry. It is the dropping of the final, most subtle concept that stands between you and the infinite. Your daily life is saturated with this external search. You face a difficult decision. What is your impulse? To seek guidance. To pray, God, show me what to do. In that moment, you have instantly created a confused you here, and an all-knowing God out there who must transmit the answer down into your ignorance. You have affirmed the gap you are trying to cross. But what if the very awareness with which you behold the dilemma is the divine awareness itself? What if the intelligence you seek is not a message to be received, but the very substance of your perceiving? The shift is not in getting an answer, but in realizing you are the embodiment of the answer. The decision then unfolds not from mental weighing, but from a clarity that rises from that deep, fulfilled silence within, a clarity that knows without knowing how it knows. Or consider a moment of profound loneliness. The heart cries out for communion, for a presence to fill the void. The old prayer would be, God, be with me, comfort me. It assumes absence. It assumes that the comforter is a visitor to your condition of solitude. But the truth revealed in the principle of fulfillment is that this very sense of a lonely, separate self is the illusion. The fulfillment within means that the presence you would call God is the very ground of the consciousness feeling the loneliness. It is not coming, it is being. It is the I that is aware of the feeling of loneliness. Can the sun be aware of darkness? In the same way, the divine presence cannot be aware of absence, for it is all presence. To touch this is to have the loneliness enveloped not by another, but by the recognition of your own true nature as inseparable, fulfilled communion. The comfort is not an infusion, it is an unveiling. We carry this external search into our very view of the world. We see tragedy, injustice, suffering, and we cry, where is God? We look for God in the event as a power that should have intervened. We fail to see that God is not in the storm, but is the silent, omnipresent consciousness witnessing the storm, and that this consciousness is our own and is untouched by the turbulence. To know God as external is to make God a character in the world's drama, subject to its plot. But to know God as the fulfilled reality within your own awareness is to realize you are the stillness in which the drama appears and disappears. Your peace no longer depends on the scene changing, for you have located your identity in the changeless witness, not the changing picture. This ends the great fatigue of spiritual seeking. How weary the soul becomes climbing mountains of devotion, building towers of understanding, chasing experiences of light and ecstasy, always hoping to capture the divine. It is all the activity of a self that believes it is a part. The moment you grasp that the search itself is the problem, a profound relaxation occurs. You stop straining to hear God's voice and realize that the ability to listen at all is God's voice. You stop trying to see God's hand in everything and realize that the very capacity for sight is God's vision. The altar is not ahead of you. You are the altar, and the sacrifice is the burning away of the belief that you are anywhere else. Your daily practice, then, is no longer one of petition, but of recognition. It is not asking, but acknowledging. It is turning within, not to find God, but to realize God is the turning itself. Every craving for an external sign, every plea for intervention becomes a signal, a reminder to return to the fulfilled center where no separation has ever existed. There, in that silent acknowledgement, the mirage of the external deity fades, and what remains is what has always been your own being, infinite and whole. And here we confront the very core of the mirage, the illusion of a separate self seeking wholeness. When you cease the frantic search for an external God, you are left with the seeker itself. Who is this I that feels unfulfilled, that chases spiritual experiences, that bears the weight of its problems and its past? This sense of a personal, biographical self, with its story of lack, its history of wounds, its catalog of desires, is the final and most cherished illusion. It is the central character in the dream of separation. To understand that all is fulfilled in me is to see that this me cannot possibly be the fragile, needy, autobiographical self. That self is the embodiment of unfulfillment. It is, by its very definition, a story of becoming. The truth of fulfillment must therefore apply to a different I, a deeper identity that this personal sense of self obscures. This is where the rubber meets the road in your daily experience. Every moment of anxiety, every flutter of fear, every pang of resentment is a testament to the activity of this separate self. It feels threatened because it believes it is an isolated entity in a universe of other isolated entities competing for resources, love, and peace. Its entire existence is a defense of its boundaries. Think of a moment of sharp offense when someone criticizes you. What reacts? Is it not a visceral, almost automatic surge to protect an image, a story you have about who you are? That reaction is the separate self in action, defending its territory. It feels unfulfilled because its identity is built on comparison and judgment. I am better than, worse than, different from. This self can never know fulfillment, for its nature is to live in the gap between what it is and what it thinks it should be. Now, imagine facing that same criticism, not from the fortress of this personal self, but from the standpoint of the fulfilled I. This is not a psychological exercise in humility. It is a radical shift of identification. You would see the words coming, you would hear them, but they would not land on anything solid. They would pass through an awareness that knows itself to be something other than the personality being described. There would be no or one there to offend. The sting, the heat, the defensiveness, all of that belongs to the illusion. In its place, you might find a compassionate, silent witnessing, or perhaps a clear, impersonal response. But it would not be born of hurt or the need to protect a fiction. The event loses its power to disrupt because you are no longer anchored in the character that feels disrupted. This separate self is also the architect of all your worry about the future. It is the planner, the schemer, the anxious calculator trying to secure its own safety and happiness. It believes fulfillment is a condition to be achieved in the world. When I have that job, that relationship, that amount of money, then I will be whole. But this is the endless horizon. Achieve one goal, and the self immediately formulates another lack to pursue. Its existence depends on the pursuit. To see this mechanism is not to condemn it, but to see its transparent futility. The moment you recognize the anxious planning not as a necessary function of life, but as the chatter of a phantom self trying to ensure its own continuity, you can disidentify. You can step back and ask, who is it that is aware of this worrying? That awareness is not worried. It is serene, complete. It is the fulfilled I. Your deepest relational conflicts offer the most potent ground for this realization. In a moment of tension with a partner or a child, the separate self feels utterly real. It is righteously hurt, justified in its anger, clinging to its narrative of grievance. To that self, the conflict is absolutely real and personal. But what if you could, in the heat of that moment, touch the very edge of the truth? What if you could remember even faintly that the I that is truly present is not this angry persona, but the silent space in which the entire emotional storm is arising? From that space, you do not deny the human feelings, but you are no longer enslaved by them. You see the other person not as an opponent threatening your separate self, but as another expression of consciousness, perhaps lost in their own illusion of separation. Action from that center is healing. Reaction from the personal self is perpetuating conflict. The practice, then, is one of vigilant observation. It is to watch the rise of the separate self in its infinite disguises as the victim, the achiever, the critic, the connoisseur of spiritual feelings, and to gently, firmly refuse to grant it the title of I. You begin to refer your sense of identity back, always back, to the aware presence that witnesses these comings and goings. That presence does not seek wholeness. It is wholeness. It is the fulfillment itself. As this becomes your anchorage, the old, needy self begins to lose its gravitational pull. Its dramas become less compelling, its fears less convincing. You live increasingly from the profound understanding that the person you thought you were was merely a temporary pattern of thought and sensation, dancing on the surface of the infinite, fulfilled reality that you truly are. The search ends not because you have found what you were looking for, but because you have realized you are what you sought. As this illusion of a separate, seeking self begins to dissolve, an entirely new landscape of experience comes into view. This is the present, tense reality of the kingdom. We have spoken of it in metaphysical terms as a principle, but now we must come to know it as the very substance of our moment-to-moment existence. It is not a realm to enter after death, nor a condition that descends upon you in rare moments of spiritual ecstasy. It is the foundational reality of consciousness itself, right here, right now, forever obscured by the frantic narratives of past and future spun by the personal mind. To say all is fulfilled in me is to acknowledge that the kingdom, the harmony, the divine order is not a potentiality, it is the present and only fact. This requires a revolution in perception so complete it turns your ordinary day inside out. You are sitting in traffic. The personal self is impatient, frustrated, calculating lost time, labeling the situation as an obstruction to its plans. It lives in a story of delay. But the kingdom is present right there in the driver's seat. It is the pure, unimpeded awareness that is witnessing the brake lights, feeling the sensation of the steering wheel, hearing the sound of the engine. That awareness is not frustrated. It is not in a hurry. It is simply vibrantly alive. The traffic jam is a pattern unfolding within it. The moment you shift your identity from the frustrated storyteller to the aware presence, something miraculous happens. The situation may not change, but your relationship to it is transformed. The problem evaporates because it only existed as a judgment in the mind of the separate self. What remains is experience, pure and simple, unfolding in the boundless space of the kingdom. You are no longer in traffic. Traffic is happening in the infinite field of your being. Or consider a more profound human challenge, a diagnosis from a doctor, a stark word on a scan. The personal self is catapulted into a terrifying future. It spins tales of suffering, loss, and an end. It lives completely in the dreadful, what if? This is the antithesis of the kingdom, which knows only the eternal now. The present, tense reality does not deny the human facts, but it sees them from a different vantage point. It anchors you in the undeniable immediacy of this breath, this heartbeat, this moment of conscious presence. In that anchor, there is a profound stillness. The frantic projections of the mind are seen for what they are, thoughts, appearing and disappearing in the vastness of this still awareness. The kingdom is that still awareness. It is the very ground upon which the news lands. From that ground, action can be taken, appointments made, treatments chosen. But it is action born of clarity, not of panic. It is the difference between being a leaf terrified in the storm and being the deep, still sky through which the storm moves. The kingdom is also the substance of your relationships when seen aright. You look at another person, and what do you see? The personal self sees a separate entity attractive or threatening, useful or irritating, a source of potential pleasure or pain. It sees a history and a future. But the present, tense reality sees only the shining presence of life itself, momentarily assuming that form. It sees the Christ, the divine manifestation, looking back at you from behind their eyes. You are not meeting a person, you are meeting God in another guise. This is not sentimentality, it is the piercing truth. In a moment of true presence with another, when you listen without the filter of your own autobiography, when you behold them without agenda, you are in the kingdom. The conversation is no longer two separate selves negotiating. It is one consciousness communing with itself in form. All sense of loneliness vanishes in such moments because separation is seen as the illusion it is. Your work, your daily tasks, become the very theater of this revelation. Washing dishes, answering emails, walking to the mailbox. These are not mundane interruptions to be rushed through on the way to some future spiritual moment. They are the spiritual moment. The kingdom is not hidden within them. It is what they are made of once the veil of mental labeling is pulled aside. The chopping of a vegetable, felt fully in the hand, heard in the crisp sound, seen in the vibrant color, is an expression of infinite intelligence and beauty. To be completely present with the task is to worship. It is to acknowledge the is-ness, the suchness, the fulfilled perfection of the activity as it flows from the invisible into the visible. Boredom, resentment, rush. These are the dust clouds kicked up by the personal self as it refuses to inhabit the now. The kingdom is the now, pristine and complete, awaiting only your recognition. There is no need to build a bridge to it, for you are standing on it. You need only to stop believing in the abyss that the personal mind has imagined beneath your feet. Every sensation, every sight, every sound, when perceived without the intermediary of the judgmental, separating self, is a direct encounter with the divine reality. This is the secret. The world is not an obstacle to God. It is God, perceived or misperceived. Your entire day becomes a continuous opportunity to choose. Will I perceive through the lens of the personal story of lack? Or will I behold the present, tense reality of the kingdom shining forth from the heart of this very instant? The choice is the only work that remains. This brings us to the most practical and liberating consequence of this recognition, the dissolution of problems through recognition. Understand this clearly. The problems you face, from the nagging headache to the looming financial crisis to the broken relationship, do not exist as independent realities. Out there, in a world separate from consciousness, they are configurations of thought, emotion, and sensation appearing within consciousness. Their power, their solidity, their very identity as problems is granted solely by the belief of the separate self, which takes them at face value and appoints itself as the solver, the sufferer, or the victim. When you shift your identity to the fulfilled I, to the kingdom, consciousness that is the present tense reality, you are not solving the problem on its own terms. You are dissolving the very ground upon which it stands. You are recognizing it for what it is, a shadow play on the screen of awareness, having no substance, continuity, or authority apart from the mind that believes in it. Let's take a tangible daily example. You have an important presentation tomorrow. The personal self is awash in anxiety. It replays scenarios of failure, imagines criticism, feels the knot in the stomach. This feels utterly real. The problem, the fear of failure, seems to have a life of its own attacking you. The old approach would be to battle it, to pump yourself up with positive affirmations, to over-prepare, to try to suppress the fear. You are fighting a shadow, and the very fight gives the shadow its reality. Now, apply the principle of recognition. You sit not as the anxious person, but as the aware presence. You notice the thoughts of fear. You do not follow them, argue with them, or believe them. You simply see them as transient mental events appearing in the vast space of your awareness. You feel the physical tension. You do not claim it as my fear, but observe it as a sensation arising and passing within the field of the body, which itself is known by your awareness. In this simple act of recognition, of seeing the so-called problem as a series of appearances within consciousness, not as threats to consciousness, a miracle occurs. The knot of identity loosens. The anxiety, deprived of the fuel of your belief and resistance, begins to lose its coherence. It may not vanish instantly, but it is seen through. Its power to define your reality is broken. The presentation is no longer a monster to be slain. It becomes a sequence of moments to be experienced. Action can still be taken, preparation, practice, but it flows from clarity, not from panic. The problem is not solved. It is dissolved in the light of a truer understanding. Consider a deeper, more entrenched problem, a long-standing bitterness towards someone who wronged you. The personal self cherishes this. It has built an entire identity around this grievance. The righteous, wounded one. The problem feels like a permanent part of your history, a stone in your heart. To try to forgive from the level of this personal self is often just a disguised form of suppression or spiritual vanity. It doesn't touch the core. But recognition operates at that core. You turn within to the silent, fulfilled I. From this vantage, you look at the bitterness. You see it as a heavy, dark energy held in the mind and body. You see the repetitive mental movies of the past event. Crucially, you recognize that all of this, the memory, the emotion, the story, is our content appearing in the space of your awareness. You are not the content. You are the space. The bitterness is like a cloud in the sky of your being. Can a cloud hurt the sky? In that recognition, the identification with the hurt persona begins to weaken. You are no longer the person who was wounded 10 years ago. You are the presence aware of the memory of being wounded. This is not an intellectual trick. It is a fundamental shift in the seat of identity. The bitterness, starved of the self that fed it, gradually loses its form. It may dissipate slowly, but its reality as a defining problem in your life is instantly negated. You are free, not because the past changed, but because your relationship to it has been utterly transformed. This is the secret behind what the world calls healing. a physical condition appears, medicine and the personal self see a localized malfunction to be attacked or corrected. But from the standpoint of the kingdom of fulfilled consciousness, you recognize the condition as a temporary pattern, a belief in limitation taking form. You do not fight the form. You turn away from it, not in ignorance, but in profound wisdom. You turn to the only reality, the wholeness, the harmony, the infinite life that is the substance of your true being. You rest in the recognition of that as the only fact. In that rest, a power far greater than any human will goes to work. Not on the problem, but on the consciousness that was hypnotized by the problem. The pattern, no longer empowered by fear and belief, can reorganize itself according to the truth of wholeness. Sometimes this reorganization appears as a rapid physical change. Sometimes it appears as a profound peace that transcends the condition. But in every case, the real healing is the dissolution of the belief that you could ever be separate from the seamless, perfect flow of divine life. The problem never existed where you thought it did. It was only ever a misperception, a ripple on the surface of the ocean, now smoothed by the knowing of the ocean's own depth. Your work is not to fix ripples, but to know yourself as the ocean. This leads us inevitably to the final, most natural movement of the soul that has glimpsed these truths, the shift from seeking to silent beholding. All striving, all spiritual technique, all prayer as petition belongs to the realm of the separate self. It is the activity of a consciousness that believes it is not yet home. But when you have touched, even for a moment, the reality that all is fulfilled within the very fabric of your aware presence, a profound fatigue with seeking sets in. Not a lethargic fatigue, but the exhaustion of a long and futile journey. You realize you have been running in a circle, chasing your own shadow. This exhaustion is a grace. It prepares the ground for a complete cessation of effort. And in that cessation, an entirely new faculty awakens, the faculty of beholding. Beholding is not an action you perform. It is a state of surrender into which you are received. It is the natural condition of the fulfilled I, which has no desires because it knows itself as the source and substance of all that is. Imagine you have spent a lifetime in a dim room, straining your eyes to read a map to find the light switch. Seeking is that straining. Then someone quietly opens the shutters. The room is flooded with sunlight. You do not then strain to see the light. You simply behold it. You let it in. Your entire relationship to light changes from one of pursuit to one of reception. This is the shift. The silent beholding is you standing in that sunlight, allowing it to be all that it is, without trying to manage it, understand it, or keep it. The light is the reality of the kingdom, the present, tense fulfillment. And it has been waiting only for you to stop searching in the dark corners with your tiny mental flashlight. Your daily life becomes the continuous opportunity to practice this shift. You are walking in the park. The seeking mind is busy. It is comparing this walk to yesterday's, planning the next task, analyzing a problem, or perhaps even seeking spiritual beauty in nature. It is active, commenting, labeling. To shift to beholding, you simply let all that internal noise fall into the background. You do not fight it. You just cease to give it your primary attention. Instead, you open your senses completely. You feel the air on your skin without naming the temperature. You see the green of the leaves without thinking tree. You hear the chorus of birdsong without trying to identify the species. You are not looking eyes at things. You are letting the totality of the experience impress itself upon you. You are silent inside, and in that inner silence, the outer world ceases to be a collection of separate objects and becomes a living, breathing, unified expression of the one life. You are not a separate observer. You are the awareness in which the entire scene is unfolding. This is beholding. In it, there is no separation between you and the park. There is only the experiencing, a deep peace, a joy without cause, naturally arises because you have stopped interfering with reality through the filter of thought. Apply this to a situation of inner turmoil. A wave of grief or anger hits. The seeker wants to get rid of it, to analyze its cause, to fix the feeling. This is more seeking, more resistance. Beholding offers a radical alternative. You turn toward the feeling with utter, silent attention. You do not analyze it. You do not call it my grief. You simply allow the raw energy of the sensation to be there, as you would allow a storm to rage in the sky. You behold it. You feel its texture, its location, its intensity, without any story about what it means or where it came from. In this silent, welcoming beholding, a miraculous alchemy occurs. The emotion, met with complete, non-judgmental awareness, is allowed to complete its natural cycle. It moves through you because you are no longer blocking it with mental commentary or resistance. It is seen for what it is, a temporary energy, not your identity. The storm passes, and the sky of your awareness is revealed, clearer and more vast for having allowed it. The problem was not the emotion, it was the seeker's frantic resistance to it. Ultimately, this silent beholding becomes your relationship with God. You stop talking to a deity out there. You fall silent. In that silence, you are not waiting for an answer. You are resting as the answer. You behold the rising and falling of thoughts, the comings and goings of sensations, the events of the world, all as movements within the infinite, still presence that you are. This is communion. This is prayer without words. It needs no outcome, for it is already complete. In the marketplace, in the office, in the quiet of your room, this inner stance of beholding is available. It is the cessation of the question, and therefore the living of the answer. Your life ceases to be a mission and becomes a manifestation. You are no longer a traveler trying to reach a destination. You are the landscape itself, awake and aware, silently beholding its own boundless beauty. Every moment, then, is not a step on the path. It is the entire path, fulfilled and complete, appearing as now